Hi, my name is Eddie Gould. I'm with the Adult Protective Services. My PowerPoint presentation is uh, mainly for professionals, and it's a 30 to 45-minute presentation on how to effectively engage and communicate with our senior population. I've been with Adult Protective Services for 6 years as a regional manager, and prior to that, I was with CYFD for about 12 years. I've been in the field of social work for about 20 years or so. I will leave my contact information for anybody that wants to contact me if you have any questions, any thoughts, any concerns. And I would also offer to any agencies that are logged in to contact us if you need any uh, trainings, presentations to your group, anything like that. So I'll give my information now, and then I'll give it again at the end of the presentation. So my email address is going to be edward.gould, Gould, at state.nm.us. And the best number to reach me is 505-205-5966. So without further ado, we will go ahead and get started with the slides. Typically, this is an interactive presentation, so we may get through it in about 30 minutes or so. And again, if you have any questions after the presentation, please feel free to contact me. Effective communication has practical benefits. So what I typically ask my groups are, what is communication versus good communication? What is the difference? And some of the things that we talk about are, some of the examples we share are, you can communicate effectively, but if you're not communicating the right information, then that may not lead to the right outcome. And so what we're hoping for in the population that we work with is effective communication, good outcomes, and just being able to engage them. And sometimes we have very limited time to engage our population and the people that we work with. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but if we're effectively communicating the right things, then it could lead to better outcomes for the people that we serve. Again, better outcomes for the older person or the senior that we're working with. An example of that is if we're helping them to apply for certain benefits or any other kind of services that they qualify for, if we're effectively communicating the right information to them, then we can get services to them a lot quicker and not have to go through the process several times, which can lead to better health outcomes. What are some of the examples of this? Well, if we have an individual that we're working with and they qualify for Medicaid and we're getting them, we're doing the application and they need certain health procedures done or any number of things like that, or they need a baseline primary care physician visit, then the quicker we can get the application submitted and get them qualified, then the quicker they can get services. If you're effectively communicating, or if you're having good communication with your client or the person that you're working with, it helps to build rapport and it helps to strengthen the relationship, which is very important with this population, because if we're not effectively communicating, if we're not giving the right information, then they can feel like we're not listening or that we're not helping, and then that could lead to us losing the relationships. It's very important. And sometimes we have limited time with the people we're working with. An example of that is, you go to an older person's home, they have some health issues maybe, or they're just not feeling well that day, and you're there for 10 or 15 minutes and they say, I'm not feeling real well today. Can we go ahead and end this meeting? And you have to respect that as a professional. So that time that you spent in that 10 to 15 minute time frame communicating with the person that you're serving is very important, because then you may have to get the information over several different visits, which is also fine. But just again, it makes the most out of the limited time that we may have. When you're dealing with the older population or seniors, it's really important that we use the proper form of address. And so what I mean by that is Mrs., Mr., Sir, Ma'am, we have to use proper forms of address until that person has invited us to address them otherwise. And so it's important that we avoid terms such as hon or dear or any number of other terms of endearment unless permitted otherwise by the individual. An example of that is the older person saying, "Don't call me Marge and I won't call you Sonny Boy," which is a real example of an individual that went in and said, "Hey Marge, can I speak with you about this report we received?" So if at that point, if Marge said, "Yes, that would be fine," then you ask her, is it okay that I call you Marge, or would you feel more comfortable with me calling you Mrs. Garcia? So it's okay to ask them how they would like to be addressed, and it's probably even preferred, just because that way we don't offend, and because if we offend somebody, then it's also easy to damage that relationship and lose the rapport that we have or that we're trying to establish. Over the last couple of years, it's been really difficult doing any kind of in-person visits, in-office visits, any number of things like that. However, those are slowly starting to happen again. And for those who have continued to have in-office visits throughout this last year and a half when things have been difficult, it's important that we try to make the older person comfortable within the office setting. And it's important that we have frequent check-ins with them. If you have a waiting area, make sure that it's comfortable for them. Offer assistance with filling out forms. So while they're sitting there waiting to see somebody, it's really important that the staff comes and checks on them. "Hello, Mrs. Garcia, are you doing okay? Can I get you anything? Would you like some water?" The waiting area, make sure that it's comfortable, that there's ample seating, that people can sit in a comfortable area, that the climate control is nice, and there's not too many noises and those kinds of things. And if you're having your older person fill out any documentation or forms or applications, then it's really important that you offer any assistance. And they may say, "I'm fine, I don't need the assistance with this. I know how to fill this out." That's perfectly fine, but at that point, just continue to do the check-ins with them. It's important that we're aware of our nonverbal cues. And so, the older person, the senior, the person we're working with, they have a story to tell and they want to be heard. And so you might be there with a goal, a plan, a mission to get certain information, to get certain things done, and that's fine. But if the individual you're working with really has a story to tell you that takes a little bit more time, it's really important that we're there, that we're actively listening, and that we're effectively listening. And so it's also important that we do not rush the older person, the individual we're working with. It's also important that if we are running late, that we apologize for being late. If there's any delays, if you're running late, that you call ahead of time and say, "I'm running late." If you have to cancel the visit or reschedule, it's important that you call them and that you let them know, because that's very important. And again, that goes back to being respectful and just building the rapport and the trust of the older person that you're working with. Sometimes it's important to use small talk to keep them engaged. And some of the icebreakers you can use are you from the area? This is a beautiful area. How long have you lived here? And those kind of things. It's really important that we're aware of our nonverbal cues, and we'll talk a little bit more about that here in just a moment. It's also important that we don't rush the older person. Again, they've got a story to tell. They want to be heard and they need to be heard. It's really important that that's happening. And so we have to avoid asking rapid fire questions. And what do I mean by that? So asking a question and then asking another question in rapid succession after you haven't even got an answer from the first question. So that could be difficult on the person that you're serving. That could be really difficult for them, and it could really get frustrating, stressful, and you just really don't want to rush this older person. You want to manage your time in a manner that you give yourself enough time when you go out to see them, that you have enough time to let them speak, let them ask questions, tell a story if they need to tell their story, and that there's ample time for your visit. Getting back to nonverbal cues, it's really important that we are aware of our nonverbal cues, and that we're not showing nonverbal cues that indicate that we're frustrated with the pace of the meeting, or that it's just taking too long, or that we're getting frustrated ourselves. Sometimes working with this population, they may repeat themselves. They may forget what they're talking about mid-sentence. They may jump to another topic, so we have to really be patient. And so it's important that your nonverbal cues are not showing that you're looking at your watch, that you're looking at the clock on the wall, that you're tapping your foot, or that you're tapping your hand, or that you're showing that you're really trying to get out of there, because they'll pick up on it, and that could really affect the relationship negatively. What we should be doing working with these individuals is be encouraging, be reassuring, and be comforting. So if an older person is telling you their story and they're seemingly getting frustrated, or they're repeating themselves a lot, or they're forgetting their story, just be encouraging. Tell them it's okay. We'll get through this together. You have time. I'm listening. Reassure them. Help them to try and remember what they were talking about, to get back on track, and just be comforting. Again, your nonverbal cues are going to go a long way in maintaining the relationship, building or maintaining the rapport of that relationship, and ultimately leading to better or worse outcomes depending on how we build that relationship. It's also important that we monitor the pace and the tone of our voice, and that we speak clearly. Sometimes we rattle off a bunch of different instructions. I don't know if anybody's ever been in a setting where you're sitting there and the professional walks in and they just rattle off a bunch of information, and you're sitting there like, what did they just say? So just monitor the pace, the tone, the prosody of your voice. Speak clearly. If you need to repeat, repeat yourself. If offer opportunities for questions. Do you have any questions or anything I can clear up for you? And just remember that being rushed can make the older person feel like they're not being listened to, which again can really damage the relationship or the rapport or the trust, ultimately leading to not as good outcomes as we would like. So again, this is really important, establishing rapport and active listening. It is likely that it will take several visits and phone calls to get the necessary information from the older person if you interrupt them during the first encounter or the first visit. And even if you did everything right, you're actively listening, you're being encouraging, supportive, doing everything perfectly, like I spoke of earlier, the person you're serving might say, look, I'm really tired today. I'm not having a great day. Can we end this meeting early? And that's perfectly fine. So, that's why it's important that within that 10-15 minute range, if it's 20, if it's 30 minutes, that we're really effectively communicating the right information to our clients, okay? It's important that you do all you can to establish rapport and the confidence of the older person during this initial visit, as it will set the course for the rest of your professional relationship with the older person. So that initial visit is really important. The people that we work with, the people that we serve, this older population, they have a good sense of character, and they have, if you're communicating effectively with them, if you're supportive, if you're listening to them, and you're building the rapport with them, then that's going to go a long way with them if you're respectful, and they'll want you to come back. If for some reason we lose that in that first visit, me as a manager might be getting a call and saying, hey, I don't want that person back at my house. So it's really, really important during that first visit that we do everything that we can to establish rapport. It's important that we demonstrate empathy and active listening, and some of the examples of that are, that sounds difficult, but I think we can work through this together. So you're meeting with somebody, they're telling you their story, you're actively listening, and then you're employing empathy and active listening, and really supportive, offering the support and offering a supportive relationship to them. It's important that we avoid using fancy jargon or acronyms. I know that in our field of social work and medical and other law, other fields, we get accustomed to using acronyms, and we have certain phrases that we use. But when you're working with the older person, just know that they're the expert on their own situation. You know, ask them, and they'll help you to gain insight on their situation. It's important that we don't go in and just start dictating to them their situation, because they're the ones living their situation and we're not. Meet them where they're at. Have a person-centered approach. You know, if that means that on day one of your home visit, that the older adult wants to take you and show you the flowers in their garden that they're growing, if that's going to help with the relationship, if that's going to help build the rapport and the trust, then we need to take that step. We need to be supportive. That's all part of being supportive, showing empathy, and just being an active listener, listening to their story. Follow their lead. The person that you're serving, they're their own expert on their own situation. It's important that we introduce who we are and why we're there, and of course gain consent to enter the home and do all that stuff that we need to do. But after that point, if they want to talk about something else, or they want to tell their story, it's important that we follow their lead. If we're going to be offering any types of services or recommending any types of services or follow-up, then it's important that we have a conversation with that individual and say, these are the services that I feel would really assist you. Are you okay with me making referrals? And so it's really important to not blindside them, make a referral, and then another professional shows up at their house next week and they have no idea about it. Okay. Again, just avoid using fancy jargon, use plain language, and if you're talking about if you're reviewing some paperwork with them and there's a lot of acronyms in there, then just break it down for them. Use the plain language, and again, like I mentioned earlier, give opportunities to ask questions. Take your time, let them tell their story. Monitor your nonverbal cues, be supportive, and be an active and effective listener. Showing empathy is really important. Again, we touched on this a little bit earlier, but just again, using phrases like, I'm sorry that happened to you. I hope it works out for you. Please let me know if I can assist in any way. Or that sounds difficult. Just using supportive phrases when you're working with these people. It goes a long way, showing empathy, again, to build trust, to build rapport, to show them that they're being listened to show them that they're important and that their situation is important, and that you're there to affect change and to be a support to them. Being culturally sensitive, this is really, really important. It's important that we try to build rapport through asking culturally appropriate questions. And what do I mean by that? So it's really important that we don't make assumptions, that we never make assumptions just based on what we see in front of us. And one of the questions that you can ask that's appropriate is, what traditions are important to you and your family? And this will really give you a lot of insight onto what's culturally important for the family that you're working with. What holidays do you celebrate? Do you celebrate holidays? These are all appropriate questions that you can ask. Again, just never make assumptions. At this point, I usually share the story of the medicine man, and there's this family that's working with the therapist, and it's a Native American family, and they're having a lot of difficulties with a teenager in the home. The therapy's not going so well. So one day in family therapy, the therapist suggests to the family that they engage the medicine man in the treatment. And so the family kindly lets the therapist know that they're a Christian family, and that they don't follow their traditional ways, and that if they would like to bring a healer into their treatment, then that they would offer that they would talk to their family pastor to be part of the treatment plan for their family. And so again, just never make assumptions what you see in front of you, based on what you see in front of you, or based on stereotypes or anything like that. And it's really important, because once we've demonstrated that we can't be culturally sensitive or culturally appropriate with somebody that we're serving, then it's going to be really, really difficult to get them back. And so once we've offended somebody culturally, it might be very difficult to continue working with them. They may extend some grace to you, which would be really nice of them, but sometimes we may damage that relationship. So just again, don't make assumptions. Make sure if you are asking questions that you ask culturally appropriate questions. Write down takeaways, any takeaway points. So whatever information that you're offering, ensure that you repeat it. Offer it in writing and give time to answer questions. Even if you feel you have already answered the question. So if you go to a person's house, or you're meeting with somebody in your office, not everybody has the smartphones, not everybody has access to the internet or technology, or even knows how to use it. And so I like to share this story of my own grandmother. She passed away about 6 years ago. She was in her 80s. But she had a jitterbug phone, if you all know what that is. So it's got a button on it to call home, a button on it to call an emergency contact, and then it has big buttons to dial. They're large because if eyesight is a problem. So there was no way to look up anything on the internet or fill out an application on your phone or anything like that. So not everybody has the technology or is comfortable with the technology. And so it's important that we are prepared with printouts, handouts, that we go over the information that we're sharing, referrals we're making, and then again, just would you like to discuss again, are there any other pieces of this material that you'd like to go over with before I leave? The follow-up to that is it's really important that we're offering a follow-up phone number somewhere they can call, whether it be myself, whether it be somebody in the office that works on this in this area, whether it be the customer services number to Medicaid, but that when they've taken the material home, they've asked you as many questions as they need to, they've written everything down, and then it's 7 o'clock at night on Thursday night and everybody's closed, then they have another way to try and contact. So it's really important that we are addressing all the different adult learning styles as well, and that we're offering several different ways for the older person to make contact as needed. It's really important that we ensure that we're compensating for any visual, hearing impairments, any disabilities, anything like that. And then beyond that, if you do have assistive devices available, make sure that your staff knows how to use them, and make sure that they're in working order. Make sure you have batteries or whatever you need for them, because there's nothing worse than, you have the senior, the older person come in and see you, and they do need an assisted device, and we're digging through the closet, we find one, it doesn't work, or the staff that's there doesn't know how to use it, or that could be very frustrating. That could be very frustrating for the individual that's trying to receive services or trying to get help. And so that could be damaging to the relationship. That can, because if you think about, for some of the individuals, that how difficult it is for them to leave their home, drive across town, the current situation we're in with the current health crisis, there's a lot of factors there. And so if they take all those steps, make it to your office to come see you, to get something done that's very important, and then we don't have the equipment for them, or it doesn't work, or our staff don't know how to use it, that could be very frustrating to the people that we serve. So just make sure that if you are using any of those, that people are trained on it, that they're in good working order. Even test them frequently to make sure that there's not going to be any issues with those devices. Okay, again, just a quick recap. It's important that we communicate effectively, and that we remember that it has benefits, and that what are the benefits? The benefits are good outcomes for the people that we serve. It's important that we use proper forms of address, Mr., Mrs., Sir, Ma'am, until we're invited to call them by their first name, or whatever else they want to be called. Make sure that we are making the older person comfortable. Again, frequent check-ins, assist with filling out applications, just, is the temperature okay in here? Would you like some water? Just frequent check-ins. It goes a long way. Be a good listener and don't rush the older person, and be aware of your nonverbal cues. So remember, they have a story to tell. It's important that we let them tell their story. It's important that they feel like they are being heard, and that we're not rushing them, that we're not sending a nonverbal cue that that we're trying to get out of there or anything like that. So set up your visit where you have ample time to spend with the older person, and that you have enough time to address any of their needs there and listen to the story that they have to tell. Again, just avoid fancy jargon, avoid using acronyms. The older person, the older adult you're working with is the expert on their own situation, and they can help you to gain insight. Show empathy. Remember, that sounds really difficult. Remember those phrases. That sounds difficult, but we can work through this together. I'm sorry that happened to you. Is there any way that I can assist? Again, remember the story of the medicine man. Practice cultural competence. Have some insight there. Ask culturally appropriate questions. And then again, addressing all the adult learning styles. Write down the takeaway points. Rehash those points. Ask if they have any questions. Give them a number to contact if they really need to contact somebody even after you've left. Compensate for visual, hearing impairments, disabilities, anything like that. Make sure that we're being really ADA compliant and friendly, and that anybody that needs to get services can get services regardless of any disability or any difficulties they have. So we're right at about 30 minutes. Again, this PowerPoint usually takes 45 minutes to an hour because it's pretty interactive when we're doing it live. But again, I would like to offer my contact information. It's twofold. I mean, if you have any questions on this PowerPoint or any of this information or anything like that, and also if your agency is interested in receiving a presentation from Adult Protective Services on what we do, how we serve the people, what services are available, how we address abuse, neglect, and exploitation, or any number of things. And again, so my name is Eddie Gould, and I am one of the regional managers for Adult Protective Services. And I can be reached at, my email is edward.gould, Gould, at state.nm.us. And I can also be reached on my mobile phone, which is 505-205-5966. So again, please feel free, please don't hesitate to contact me if you have any questions, any concerns, anything that I can assist with. Thank you for listening and have a great day.